Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to a deep dive that pulls us into a case where, well, the banality of suburban life collided violently with absolute calculated horror.
Today, we are immersing ourselves, really digging into the sources surrounding one of the most sensational and grim criminal cases in New Jersey history.
Well,
We're talking about the conviction of Melanie McGuire.
for the murder of her husband, William Bill McGuire, back in 2004, a tragedy that the media very quickly branded the suitcase murder.
Yeah, and that name itself, Suitcase Murder, it's immediately evocative, isn't it? It tells you right away we're dealing with something more than, say, a crime of passion. It implies this cold, almost forensic planning.
Exactly. So our mission today, for you, the listener, is to quickly move past maybe the headlines you remember and truly grasp the almost unbelievable architecture of the investigation itself. We need to understand not just that she was convicted, but how. How did the authorities take these fragments?
Literally fragments.
Yeah, fragments of human remains, fragments of purchase receipts, fragments of digital travel data, and weave them all together into this pretty much irrefutable timeline that led straight back to a nurse and mother living in Woodbridge Township.
This deep dive, it's essentially a study in modern forensic convergence. I mean, you have this seemingly normal couple on the surface, right? A nurse at a fertility clinic, a computer programmer husband, two young sons. They were even buying a dream home.
A picture-perfect life, almost.
Almost. Yet that dream just imploded, and it culminated in these three pieces of luggage found floating hundreds of miles away in the Chesapeake Bay. And inside, dismembered human remains.
It's horrifying to even picture. And here's the core, the almost unbelievable question we really have to try and answer today. How did investigators manage to bridge that massive gap? Geographically, circumstantially. How did they connect three matching suitcases found way down in Virginia to this specific woman in New Jersey?
And crucially, with zero eyewitnesses to the actual crime.
Right. How did they secure a conviction based almost entirely on this web of highly specific, meticulously tracked material and digital evidence? Let's start at the beginning. Let's set the scene of the life that was, well, about to shatter.
Okay, so to really appreciate the shockwave this crime sent through New Jersey, you have to understand the public face Melanie McGuire presented. She was born Melanie Lynn Slate in 1972.
And she grew up in pretty affluent parts of New Jersey, right? Like Ridgewood, then Middletown Township.
Exactly. And by all accounts, she wasn't just average, she was academically brilliant. Our sources really emphasize this.
Yeah, the sources point to really high academic achievement. She wasn't just smart, she seemed incredibly driven. Graduated from Rutgers University in '94.
That's right, with a double major, no less math and psychology.
Wow. That academic profile, it immediately complicates the sort of stereotypical image you might have of a killer, doesn't it? This wasn't someone who, lacked control or intellectual capacity.
No, quite the opposite, it seems. And she continued her education after Rutgers. By 1997, she graduated second in her class from the Charles E. Gregory School of Nursing.
And that training as a nurse, that obviously becomes deeply relevant later when we get into the precise, almost clinical nature of the alleged crime and, well, the disposal.
Absolutely. She had the intellect and she had that medical knowledge base. So she married William T. Bill McGuire. He was a U.S. Navy veteran back in 1999.
And by 2004, they appeared, established. Melanie was working as a nurse at a fertility clinic. That workplace link is something we'll definitely revisit. Bill was a computer programmer.
And they built a family, two young sons. And outwardly, they were striving for that kind of upward mobility. They were closing on a new house.
They were really the picture of that aspirational middle-class life.
Which brings us directly to that moment of fracture, April 2004. This period of their lives was just defined by this immense contradiction. They were still living in their Woodbridge Township apartment, but they were finalizing the purchase of a much bigger, much more expensive home out in Warren County.
That move, it represented stability, success, a shared future.
But the narrative contrast here is, frankly, chilling. The sources confirm they closed on the new house on April 28, 2004. I mean, this should have been a monumental day, right? The culmination of years of planning, working towards this goal.
And yet the prosecution alleged that this very night, the night they secured their quote-unquote forever home, was the night Melanie drugged, killed, and then dismembered Bill.
They never spent a single night in that new house together.
Unbelievable.
So the motivation for such a drastic, immediate act, it had to be powerful enough to overshadow everything else. The massive financial commitment, the logistics of, well, murder and disposal.
And police later confirmed what the prosecution would lean on really heavily, that facade of the happy marriage. It was crumbling. And there was this critical piece of circumstantial evidence.
The affair. Melanie was having a long-term affair with a coworker named Bradley Miller.
Right. And that relationship, according to the prosecution anyway, was the catalyst. It provided the motive, the desire to start this new, unencumbered life with Miller, free from a messy, potentially costly divorce, custody battles, all the financial entanglements.
And the timeline the prosecution alleged suggests profound premeditation. Their theory was that on the night of April 28, 2004, perhaps using her professional knowledge, McGuire drugged her husband.
So incapacitate him first.
Right. Then, once he was incapacitated, she allegedly shot him dead. And then used tools, maybe even surgical or medical instruments, given her background to dismember his body.
The sources detail the next alleged steps, the remains meticulously packaged.
Placed into that three-piece set of luggage.
And then destined for disposal hundreds of miles away.
The clinical nature of it all, the alleged drugging, the shooting, the dismemberment, it just suggests a plan that wasn't, conceived in a moment of rage. It feels like something that had been thought about, crystallized, prepared for.
And the timing. Closing on the new house just hours before the alleged murder. It adds this layer of cold calculation that's just really hard to wrap your head around.
So the initial discovery happens way down in Virginia, hundreds of miles away, and this immediately threw the investigation into this complex, multi-jurisdictional chaos. You had police from different states needing to work backwards from these horrific remains to figure out who this person was and where they came from.
It starts with this grim sequence beginning May 5th, 2004. That's about a week after the alleged murder date, right?
Correct. The first piece of luggage is found near the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel's fourth artificial island.
And inside, human legs.
Yes. Just horrifying. And the discovery itself was tragic, made by two fishermen and maybe worst of all, two children who were with them.
Oh, terrible.
This immediately launched a major murder investigation down in Virginia. Clear-cut evidence of a homicide.
And the discoveries kept coming sequentially, which sort of reinforces that methodical nature of the disposal you mentioned.
Exactly. On May 11th, so about 6 days later, a second, larger suitcase was found. This time by a graduate student who was cleaning a beach at the Fisherman Island National Wildlife Refuge.
And this one contained
The torso and, critically, the head.
Okay, so the head is key because the contents of that second case provided the first real forensic link to the cause of death, didn't they?
They did. The head had one clear bullet wound, and the torso had two more bullet wounds to the chest. So this wasn't a natural death. It wasn't just someone who went missing. This is a violent, almost execution-style homicide, followed by this meticulous effort to hide the victim's identity.
3 bullet wounds in total, then.
Yes. And then the third and final piece of this awful puzzle arrived on May 16th. The smallest suitcase containing the arms was recovered near the second artificial island of the bridge tunnel complex.
So within about 11 days, authorities had all 3 sections of the victim's remains. It confirms they're dealing with a planned disposal, likely executed, via that bridge tunnel route, dropping them off along the way.
But the body was still anonymous. The victim was unidentified, packaged up, dumped hundreds of miles from home. The next massive hurdle was just putting a name to these remains.
Police must have recognized that the dismemberment, the disposal method, it was all intended to defeat identification.
Absolutely. So they launched a huge public appeal. They released a detailed facial reconstruction sketch of the victim, based on the skull to media outlets all across the region. They were just hoping for a break, someone to recognize him.
And that breakthrough eventually came through the sketch.
It did. An acquaintance, some sources say a former coworker, recognized the sketch. He said it looked like Bill McGuire.
Wow. So once fingerprints or other factors confirmed the identity was William McGuire, the investigation shifted dramatically, didn't it? Because Bill was a resident of Woodbridge Township, New Jersey.
It's exactly. At that moment, the case officially transferred jurisdiction to the New Jersey State Police. What had been a missing person investigation instantly became a murder investigation. And Melanie McGuire, the wife who was supposedly dealing with a missing husband while moving house, she instantly became the prime suspect.
Now, even before they started digging into all that forensic evidence we'll get to, the police were already dealing with some extremely strange behavior from Melanie, right? The sources highlight this early red flag that immediately kind of complicated her narrative of being just a worried or grieving wife.
Yes, that was the protection from abuse order. Just days before the alleged murder date, Melanie had applied for a protection from abuse order against Bill.
Okay, so on the surface, that's a legal step someone might take if there's domestic volatility, and it certainly provided context for the defense later when they tried to claim Bill was moody and unpredictable.
Right, but maybe more importantly at this early stage, it directly undermined her own explanation for other strange events, like the car.
Ah, yes, the car. When police eventually tracked down Bill's Nissan Maxima, it had been towed from the Flamingo Motel in Atlantic City. Melanie gave this just stunning, almost unbelievable explanation for it being there.
She claimed she had moved the car there herself, as a prank.
A prank. After filing a protection order against him just days earlier, the idea of driving his car hours away to Atlantic City, abandoning it, maybe paying to have it parked or towed, just as a joke, it just doesn't hold water, especially not in the eyes of investigators.
No. It completely clashed with the protection order narrative. It signaled not some playful relationship, but an active, volatile situation where she was already seeking legal protection from him. It certainly made investigators suspicious. The stage was really set for them to dig deep into the evidence.
Okay, so this is where the investigation truly becomes, well, remarkable. We move from this grisly, cross-state mystery to a really calculated, precise prosecution built on this stunning accumulation of forensic and digital details. Law enforcement clearly understood they needed to build a case that didn't rely on a confession, but on the irrefutable convergence of facts.
This is the section where the source material really shines, detailing the meticulous police work. Like you said, the case wasn't really secured by one single smoking gun, but by the fact that you had, 5 or 6 independent threads of evidence?
Yeah.
And they all pointed unwaveringly in the same direction.
Towards Melanie McGuire.
Towards Melanie McGuire. Let's start with maybe the most essential element.
Yeah.
The weapon. The means of death.
The weapon trail. And this is exceptionally damning because the timeline is just chilling. The sources confirm that just 2 days before the alleged murder, April 26, 2004, Melanie purchased a .38 caliber handgun.
Right, from a sporting goods store over in Easton, Pennsylvania. Now, the type of weapon itself, a .38, that's common enough. But it was the ammunition that provided a stronger link.
Forensics established definitively that Bill McGuire was killed with a .38 caliber handgun. And the bullets recovered from his body, they weren't standard rounds, were they?
No, they were wad cutter cartridges.
Wad cutters. Let's pause on that for a second, because this is where the depth of the evidence really matters for you, our listener. Wad cutters are typically used for target practice, right? They're known for cutting a clean, neat hole in paper targets. They aren't generally considered the best for, say, self-defense or stopping power.
Exactly. And that's significant. It suggests, perhaps, practice, planning, maybe a desire to control the scene.
But wad cutters.
The use of wad cutters suggests the person who did this was either familiar with them from target practice or maybe was actively seeking ammunition that would penetrate cleanly, perhaps without over-penetrating, making the scene less messy, or maybe producing a specific kind of internal injury. It speaks more to cold preparation than, a panicked reaction.
And the detail on the receipt from the gun store, it's almost unbelievable. Melanie's receipt for the gun also listed a separate, unspecified purchase for exactly $9.95.
And the investigators, being incredibly meticulous, actually went back to that store. They confirmed that only 2 items in the entire store were priced at exactly $9.95.
And one of those items
Was a box of .38 caliber wad cutter cartridges.
Yeah.
Compatible with the gun she just bought.
So, okay, it wasn't 100% absolute proof she bought that box of wad cutters, but...
Yeah. But when you combine it with the forensic evidence showing wad cutters were the exact type used in the murder, it creates this overwhelming inference. She purchased the gun, and almost certainly the specific type of ammunition used to kill her husband just 2 days before he vanished. That links her directly to the means of death.
Okay, so that's the weapon, but means isn't enough, right? They needed to connect her to the disposal site way down in Virginia. And that's where her digital life, in a way, betrayed her, thanks to E-ZPass.
Ah, the E-ZPass evidence. This is just a fantastic example of modern forensics meeting sort of low-level digital surveillance. Our sources confirm that Melanie's E-ZPass tag, the electronic toll collection device, it was recorded pinging a toll booth down in Delaware.
And this was 2 days after the murder.
2 days after the murder, placing her vehicle heading south, directly toward the Chesapeake Bay area where the suitcases were ultimately found.
Now, she did have an explanation for this, didn't she? Something the defense later used.
She did. She claimed she was simply driving down to Delaware to do some furniture shopping, trying to avoid New Jersey's sales tax. Plausible on the surface, I suppose.
But it was her subsequent actions surrounding that tiny, 90-cent toll charge that quickly turned the seemingly innocent trip into highly suspicious evidence for the prosecution.
Yeah, what's fascinating here and what the prosecution really jumped on was this seemingly desperate attempt to erase a really iron digital receipt. Before she was even charged with anything, Melanie herself contacted EasyPass customer service.
And tried to get that 90-cent charge removed from her account history.
Exactly. And then just days later, an unidentified man who investigators strongly believed was her stepfather contacted EasyPass and tried to get the same 90-cent charge removed again.
Wow, that attempt to delete the record, I mean, that's the classic legal concept of consciousness of guilt, isn't it? If it was just an innocent furniture shopping trip, why risk drawing attention to this tiny, insignificant toll charge? Unless, of course, you knew that charge placed your vehicle squarely on the road leading to the disposal site.
Precisely. The defense could try to argue it was just paranoia, an innocent person feeling targeted by an investigation. But the attempt by two different people focused on such a trivial amount. It gave the prosecution huge ammunition. It suggested not paranoia, but a calculated effort to manipulate digital evidence that directly contradicted her story. That tiny charge ended up speaking volumes.
Speaking of manipulation and location, let's talk about the car again. Police received an anonymous tip about Bill's car, right? His 2002 Nissan Maxima.
Yes, it was found. It had been towed from the Flamingo Motel parking lot down in Atlantic City on May 8th, 2004.
And security video from the area.
Security video confirmed the car was moved into that area in the early morning hours of April 30th, 2004. That's just 2 days after the murder. Yeah. Now, the image of the person actually moving the car was blurry, not clear enough for a positive ID.
But Melanie, when confronted with this, she came up with that prank explanation again.
She did. She claimed she moved it there as a prank on Bill to make him think he'd lost it or something.
That prank defense, I mean, it just stretches credibility to the absolute limit, doesn't it? The jury had to believe that just days after filing a protection order against him, she would then drive his car maybe 2 hours away to a gambling hotspot like Atlantic City, potentially pay to park it or arrange for towing, leave it abandoned, all as a joke.
It seems highly unlikely. The jury clearly rejected it. They likely saw it as exactly what the prosecution argued, an attempt to create a false trail. To make it look like Bill had run off, maybe because of those alleged gambling debts, a narrative the defense tried unsuccessfully to push during the trial.
Okay, so we have the gun, the EasyPass, the car. But the physical evidence related to the disposal method itself, the suitcases and what was inside them, that was maybe the most complex and ultimately really compelling evidence for the jury. Left went into the luggage and the plastic bags.
Right. So Melanie admitted during the investigation that she and Bill owned a matching three-piece set of Kenneth Cole's suitcases.
The exact same brand and style used to dispose of the body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that establishes access. Okay, she had the same type of luggage, but it was the analysis of the interior contents, specifically the plastic bags, that moved the evidence from just circumstantial to incredibly specific.
This involves some deep forensic analysis, right? Microscopic stuff.
Yes, very detailed microscopic and chemical forensic analysis. The plastic bags that were used to contain Bill's actual remains were carefully collected and analyzed. And crucially, the sources show that these bags were compared to other plastic bags found in Melanie's possession specifically, bags containing Bill's clothes that she had given to a friend, claiming Bill had left them behind.
And the result of that comparison?
The result was stunning. Forensics demonstrated that the bags containing the remains and the bags containing the clothes she gave away were manufactured on the exact same assembly line within hours of one another.
Within hours? How on earth can forensic science prove something like that? That's essential for our listeners to understand.
It involves polymer analysis and batch tracking. When plastic bags are manufactured, they use specific formulas for the polymers, specific dyes, sometimes microscopic additives. Each batch of plastic resin used for a production run carries a unique sort of chemical fingerprint.
Okay.
So by comparing the bags found down at the Chesapeake Bay with the bags recovered from Melanie's control, forensics experts could match minute variations in the polymer composition, the thickness of the plastic, even the strength and pattern of the heat seals. These unique batch characteristics were so precise that they could testify with a high degree of certainty that the bags came from the exact same production run.
Meaning they originated from the same source, likely purchased together for household use.
Precisely. It strongly suggested she used bags she already had on hand, bags acquired for everyday use, to package the remains. It makes it much less likely that she just randomly bought some trash bags at, say, a truck stop on the way down south.
That detail is just chillingly precise. It ties the disposal materials directly back to her.
And there are two more highly specific pieces of material evidence that tie her directly to the crime scene, likely the apartment: the fibers and the towels.
Right, the fibers. Green polyester fill fibers were found embedded on one of the bullets that was lodged in Bill's chest cavity.
Investigators theorized immediately that these fibers likely came from something used as a makeshift silencer, pressing a pillow or a cushion against the gun to muffle the sound of the shot, especially if it happened indoors.
And when police searched the McGuire's shared apartment,
They found a green couch, and that green couch contained the exact same type of green polyester fill fibers found on the bullet. The inference was clear. She likely used a cushion from their own couch, pressed it against the gun, and fired through it.
tying the location of the shooting directly back to their shared home, and finally, the medical connection, something linking directly back to Melanie's profession.
Yes, a specific type of medical-grade disposable towel was found wrapped around some of Bill's remains in one of the suitcases.
And this towel.
It precisely matched the towels stocked and used at the fertility clinic where Melanie worked as a nurse.
That's a direct link to her workplace. And wasn't there a witness testimony about those towels too?
There was. A witness testified that they had actually observed Melanie using the very same type of disposable medical towels when she was packing up her belongings and moving things out of the apartment around that time.
So she had access to them at work, and she was seen using them personally during the move.
Exactly. So you look at all these pieces together. Taken individually, maybe, just maybe, you could try to argue reasonable doubt for one or two. The gun receipt, the possible wad cutter purchase, the easy pass deletion attempt, that bizarre prank story about the car, owning the same luggage, the batch mashed plastic bags, the couch fibers on the bullet, the clinic towels found with the body.
But when you overlay all of them,
When you overlay all these independent facts, they form these concentric circles of evidence, all pointing exclusively to Melanie McGuire. The case becomes legally, pretty much insurmountable. It demonstrates overwhelming access, opportunity, the means, and a clear, conscious effort at concealment and evidence manipulation.
okay, so with that really comprehensive mountain of evidence compiled, the police were finally ready to make their move. It took some time, didn't it? More than a year after the murder.
It did. On June 2nd, 2005, Melanie McGuire was apprehended. The arrest itself was quiet. It happened outside her older child's preschool right after she dropped off both kids. She was taken into custody without incident.
And the initial charge?
Initially, she was booked on first-degree murder charges. Now, a key point in this whole narrative is her bail situation. Her first bail was set at a very high $750,000.
And she made that bail.
She did. Which is the equivalent of, over $1.2 million today. She managed to post that enormous amount and was released, all while maintaining her complete innocence and securing high-profile legal representation, including the well-known attorney Joe Tacopina.
That really speaks volumes, doesn't it? Either about her own financial resources or the commitment of her family and supporters to back her defense. She was clearly determined to fight this from the outside.
Absolutely. But her legal troubles were far from over. They quickly escalated.
What happened next?
Just a few months later, in October 2005, a grand jury returned a more comprehensive four-count indictment. And given the severity of those charges and the ongoing nature of the investigation, her bail was dramatically increased.
How much?
Raised to $2.1 million.
Wow, that's equivalent to about $3.4 million today.
An extraordinary sum. And incredibly, she posted that amount as well.
To be able to post bail like that twice at those levels, it's just astonishing. It shows immense resources were mobilized to keep her out of jail, allowing her to actively participate in preparing her defense from home.
And the charges just kept accumulating. In October 2006, so a year later, she was hit with two specific counts of hindering apprehension.
What were those related to?
These centered on allegations that she had actively tried to mislead the investigation. Specifically, that she had written letters to the police, trying to plant false scenarios, maybe suggesting Bill ran off, or pointing them towards that mob dead theory she would later lean on, basically trying to throw them off her trail.
Did she have to post more bail for those?
She did, though it was a smaller amount for these specific charges, an additional $10,000 bail, which she also posted.
Okay, so after all these pretrial maneuverings, the trial finally gets underway. When was that?
The trial commenced on March 5th, 2007. That's nearly 3 years after Bill's remains were first discovered down in Virginia.
And the prosecution's case was built on all that evidence we just discussed.
Exactly. They presented the gun purchase, the Easy Pass data, the car, the luggage, the bags, the fibers, the towels, all woven together with a clear, concise motive. Melanie wanted her husband gone so she could start a new life with her lover, Bradley Miller, free from the burdens of her marriage and finances.
And McGuire's defense team, what was their strategy?
Their main strategy seemed to be undermining the victim's credibility. They argued Bill wasn't the stable family man he appeared to be. Instead, they portrayed him as a compulsive gambler who'd racked up massive debts.
Implying maybe he fled, or maybe he was killed by, loan sharks or mobsters in Atlantic City, people he owed money to.
Precisely. That was the alternative narrative they tried to plant. Melanie maintained her total innocence throughout the trial. She focused on Bill's alleged moody and unpredictable behavior as the reason she wanted to leave him, offering that as an alternative explanation for why he might have disappeared or why she might have sought that protection order.
So the jury heard weeks of testimony, right? A lot of it focusing on that really technical forensic evidence of the Easy Pass records, the chemical analysis of the plastic bags, the fiber comparisons.
Yes, it was a very evidence-heavy trial.
Oh.
And on April 23, 2007, after deliberating, the jury returned their verdict.
And they found her.
Guilty. Guilty of first-degree murder, beyond a reasonable doubt. This clearly indicated they accepted the prosecution's timeline and believed the forensic evidence linked her directly to the crime.
Were there other convictions?
Yes. She was also convicted of desecration of human remains that covered the dismemberment and disposal. Also perjury, likely related to statements she made during the investigation or proceedings, and possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, which was the .38 caliber handgun.
But it was a split verdict in some ways, wasn't it? She wasn't convicted on everything.
That's right. And this is a fascinating legal nuance. While convicted of the most serious charges carrying the life sentence, she was actually acquitted on those 2 counts of hindering apprehension, the ones related to allegedly writing misleading letters to the police. She was also found not guilty of tampering with evidence and not guilty of possessing a prazolam, Xanax, without a prescription.
What do those acquittals maybe tell us about how the jury viewed the case?
It suggests, perhaps, that the jury was intensely focused on the core physical evidence of the murder and disposal. They clearly believed the gun, the bags, the Easy Pass data, the body disposal proved she committed the murder and desecrated the remains. But maybe those ancillary charges like proving the specific intent behind those alleged letters or the exact elements of tampering perhaps lacked the same level of irrefutable forensic backing as the murder itself.
So they believed she did the main act, but maybe weren't convinced beyond a reasonable doubt on every single supporting charge the prosecution brought.
That seems plausible. They were selective, focusing on the most heinous acts, supported by the strongest physical links. Then, after the conviction, but before sentencing, there was that whole debacle with the jailhouse informant, a last-ditch effort by the defense.
Right, trying to inject that mob debt theory back into the proceedings.
Exactly. Right after she was found guilty, her defense team appealed for a brand new trial. And the basis for this was supposed testimony from an inmate named Christopher Time.
And Time claimed.
He claimed he had information that Bill McGuire was, in fact, deeply in debt to dangerous people, possibly Atlantic City mobsters, and that they were the ones who killed him. This would, of course, corroborate the defense narrative from the trial.
That must have sounded like a potential bombshell. If the defense could actually produce credible evidence of an alternative killer, it could potentially overturn the entire verdict.
Absolutely. Which is why the prosecution moved incredibly quickly and decisively to debunk this claim. They used the full investigative power of the New Jersey State Police, and they didn't just dismiss the claim, they investigated the informant himself, Christopher Time.
And what did that investigation turn up? How did they attack his credibility?
The sources are pretty clear on this. The police investigation established that Thiem was, to put it legally, entirely incredible and routinely and habitually fabricates stories. He was essentially known within the prison system as someone who made things up.
A known liar, basically?
Pretty much. The police presented evidence showing he had an established pattern of trying to trade false information about various cases in exchange for potential leniency or better treatment for himself. They proved he had absolutely no genuine connection to Bill McGuire, no real knowledge of Atlantic City mobs, or any specific facts of this case beyond what he could have read in the media. He just constructed a narrative.
So that completely destroyed the credibility of this supposed new evidence.
Utterly. And then the situation imploded further for the defense. The informant, same, later completely recanted his testimony. And not only that, he then accused McGuire's own attorney of suborning perjury.
Meaning he claimed the lawyer had encouraged him to lie under oath.
That's what he claimed. That accusation immediately forced the defense attorney to withdraw the entire motion for a new trial based on Syme's story. Any hope of using the mob theory to create reasonable doubt post-verdict just evaporated. That door was slammed shut hard.
Okay, so with that final attempt at a new trial based on the informant withdrawn, Melanie McGuire faced sentencing. When did that happen?
On July 19, 2007, she was 34 years old at the time, and she was formally sentenced to life imprisonment.
And the specifics of that sentence. Was parole a possibility?
Technically, yes, but the judge imposed a very long period of parole ineligibility. The sentence was life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole only after serving 66 years.
66 years. So for context, that means she won't even be eligible for parole consideration until she's 101 years old.
Exactly. Given the brutal nature of the crime, the premeditation the jury clearly believed, and the desecration of the remains, the judge imposed a sentence that effectively means she will spend the rest of her natural life in prison. She's currently incarcerated at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women in New Jersey.
A very severe sentence reflecting the jury's verdict. But even with such a definitive conviction and sentence, the legal fight usually doesn't end there, especially in high-profile cases like this. There are appeals, right?
Oh, yes. Years of appeals typically follow, challenging every possible aspect of the trial and conviction. Her conviction was first reviewed by a New Jersey appeals court.
And the outcome?
On March 16, 2011, the appeals court affirmed her conviction. They essentially found no significant legal errors in the original trial, the way the law was applied, the way evidence was presented that would warrant overturning the verdict.
Okay, so the appellate court upheld it. What about the highest court in the state?
She tried to take it further. Her lawyers appealed to the New Jersey Supreme Court, but on September 20th, 2011, the Supreme Court declined to even hear the case.
Which pretty much closed the door on her direct appeals within the state judicial system, right? Cementing the original conviction.
Correct. That exhausted her standard state appeal routes.
But even after the state Supreme Court refused the case, the fight still wasn't completely over. It shifted into a different kind of legal challenge.
Exactly. It moved into the realm of post-conviction release, or PCR. This is often a last-ditch effort, usually filed years later, arguing that something fundamentally unfair happened outside the standard trial process itself.
And she filed one of those.
She did. On April 29, 2014, nearly 3 years after the Supreme Court decision, she filed a major PCR motion. It alleged two main things. First, ineffective assistance of counsel, basically saying her trial lawyers didn't do a good enough job. And second, newly discovered evidence.
Okay, the ineffective assistance claim, that's a common tactic in these situations, isn't it? How did she argue that her high-profile defense team, including Joe Tacopina, was inadequate?
She primarily contended that her attorneys failed to adequately investigate and present the evidence related to Bill McGuire's alleged gambling addiction and debts. She argued they didn't fully pursue that alternative mob hit theory that the jury ultimately rejected, basically claiming they didn't do enough to develop that defense narrative.
Despite Tacopina being a very experienced, pretty aggressive defense attorney himself.
Right. There's a certain irony there. And the newly discovered evidence part was likely related to trying to bolster that same gambling debt theory.
So what happened with this PCR motion? Did it lead to a hearing or potentially overturn the conviction?
No, it was ultimately denied. In September 2014, the courts concluded that her representation during the trial did meet the required legal standard of effectiveness, and they found that the alleged new evidence wasn't truly new or significant enough to cast doubt on the original verdict or warrant a retrial.
So the courts essentially reaffirmed the integrity of the 2007 trial and the overwhelming strength of the forensic evidence that led to her conviction.
That's right. Legally, her avenues for challenging the conviction seem pretty much exhausted at this point.
Now, while all this slow legal process was grinding along, the case just exploded in the public sphere, didn't it? The media latched onto it immediately.
Oh, absolutely. From the moment of her arraignment, maybe even before, the press immediately dubbed it the Suitcase Murderer. That name stuck, branding the case indelibly into the public memory.
It really had all those elements that tend to captivate the public imagination, didn't it? Sex, lies, the gruesome detail of dismemberment, a seemingly normal professional woman cast as the villain.
A complex investigation spanning multiple states. It was just a perfect storm for true crime narrative consumption.
And the sources really confirm this ongoing cultural legacy. I mean, it's been featured extensively on so many true crime TV shows over the years. Staples like Snap, Dateline NBC, 48 Hours Mystery.
And because of those incredible forensic details we spent time on, the fibers, the EZ pass data, the plastic bag analysis, it was a natural fit for shows like Forensic Files 2's as well.
That enduring public fascination, it seems to stem from that profound disconnect you mentioned earlier. This highly educated, highly functional nurse and mother revealed, through evidence, to be this cold, calculating killer capable of, well, clinical dismemberment and a long-distance disposal plan.
It's a story that continues to shock. Author John Glatt wrote a whole book about it, To Have and to Kill, chronicling the entire saga.
And it keeps popping back up. Most recently, the sources note, Lifetime produced a TV movie about it just back in 2022, right? Suitcase Killer, the Melanie McGuire story.
Yeah, starring Candace King. It was part of their Ripped from the Headlines series, which just shows how the narrative remains potent and fresh in the cultural consciousness, even now, almost 2 decades later.
The sheer length of time this story has stayed relevant from 2004 right through to today's TV movies. It really is a testament to just how chilling the details of that forensic investigation were and how captivating, in a dark way, the figure of the defendant herself remains. So looking back across this entire deep dive, synthesizing everything we've discussed from the sources, I think the most significant point is how law enforcement really adapted to the sheer complexity of this crime. This conviction wasn't secured by a smoking gun confession or a clear eyewitness seeing the act.
No, not at all.
It was secured by the irrefutable convergence of all these different threads. Digital clues, hard forensic science, meticulous tracking of purchases and movements. The prosecution took every tiny fragment, that 90-cent toll charge, the $9.95 maybe box of bullets purchased, and they assembled them into this unified, incredibly damning narrative.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, I think the Melanie McGuire case stands as a really pivotal example of how our increasingly digital lives, well, they act as inadvertent witnesses in criminal investigations now. That EZ pass charge, especially coupled with that panicked two-person attempt to scrub it from the record, it became this crucial geographical pin. It directly contradicted her alibi and pointed police south, right towards the disposal site.
It really highlights that we're all leaving this vast digital trail behind us constantly.
Constantly. Every purchase, every toll ping, every GPS record from our phones. It all now serves as potential evidence in court. And often it proves more reliable, or at least less subjective, than human memory or testimony.
It also just shows the immense power of that forensic convergence we talked about. The ability to link those tiny green fibers from the bullet back to the specific couch in their apartment.
The towels back to her specific workplace.
The plastic bags back to the same manufacturing batch as one she possessed.
And combining all that with her purchasing the exact type of weapon used just days before the murder, it created this timeline of careful, planned execution and disposal that really no defense could effectively dismantle.
It speaks volumes both about the level of preparation that must have gone into this type of calculated crime, but also about the critical importance of avoiding those small, seemingly minor mistakes.
Absolutely. The fact that her own apparent consciousness of guilt, that attempt to delete the EZ pass record, ended up being one of the key factors strengthening the case against her. That's a profound lesson, legally speaking. She seems to have put immense effort into the big gruesome parts, the alleged murder, the dismemberment, the long drive, but potentially tripped up on sweeping away a seemingly trivial digital breadcrumb.
So here's something for you, our listener, to consider as we wrap up. Despite this truly overwhelming and meticulously detailed evidence we've spent considerable time unpacking today, the gun, the EZ pass, the bags, the fibers, the timeline Melanie McGuire has persistently fought her conviction. Years later, alleging ineffective counsel after her direct appeals were exhausted. What does this deep, sustained commitment to maintaining innocence, even when facing a sentence that makes parole virtually impossible? What does that tell us about the psychology of absolute denial, especially when facing the absolute certainty of the evidence and the verdict?
That's a fascinating and frankly unanswerable question about human nature, guilt, and maybe self-preservation. It's something criminologists and psychologists grapple with constantly. For those of you interested in exploring this narrative even further, we definitely encourage you to check out the books like John Glatt's and various documentaries that chronicle this story. They offer even deeper perspectives on the people involved and the intricate details of the investigation and the trial itself.
That's all for this deep dive. We hope you gained a thorough understanding of the specific, often chilling forensic details that define the notorious Suitcase murder case and led to the conviction of Melanie McGuire.